Please welcome Senior Vice President and General Manager, Splunk Security, John Morgan.
So the industry has been modernizing the Security Operations Center for many years. But it's still the case that threats are overwhelming our analysts. Now, we have an opportunity. No, actually, we have an obligation to stop analyst burnouts and to stop threats from entering into our SOC. And we're going to think about doing this with AI and with agents. This is what we call the Agentic SOC. Yet at the same time, agents are our biggest insider threats. Now, we see this. We've talked about it. You can look no further than the exhibit halls, which are now open today. We cannot have the discussion of an agentic SOC unless we, as a security community, address the fact that these are also our biggest insider threats. And by the way, they're also non-deterministic. Non-determinism is a different output, even given the same input. So this brings up a key question for us, which is this technology a right fit? How do we think about the security risk in an agentic SOC? This is a security operations center, a last line of defense. Now, we're going to discuss this, and what I want to do is talk about the technology and the things that allow that to occur, but at the same time, I want to take a step back, and I want to give you how I personally rationalize this, how I rationalize the non-deterministic nature, how I rationalize the fact that it is a threat in these certain circumstances. Then we're going to go through an agentic SOC and give you some examples of what that looks like. So the first issue that I want to talk about is non-determinism. Now, as a community, we grapple with the non-deterministic nature of AI, and at the same time, we have expectations of control and how that's actually going to be predictable. We know how to engineer things in such a way where the systems are formulaic with recipes and they're a systematic series of controlled events. But I want to take that step back right now. Some of the most powerful things in this world, they're actually born from a non-deterministic, uncontrolled set of events. Alexander Fleming in the 1940s, he was already a well-known scientist at the time, but he won a Nobel Prize. And he won a Nobel Prize because he went on vacation. He went on vacation, and what he did is he left one of his petri dishes with Staphylococcus bacteria in it uncovered during his vacation. He came back. There was a mold spore that came up through the ventilation shaft from a completely different and independent laboratory that was doing something else, landed in that petri dish, and that's how we ended up with penicillin. Now, that's actually changed a lot of people's lives in that medical research. That's not planned, that's not determined, that was definitely not a controlled set of events. So the power of unpredictability, it's not solely related to Gen AI. Actually, if you think about it, we're building other things with non-deterministic features. Quantum computing. We're using quantum mechanics and the non-deterministic state of qubits in order to create some of the world's most powerful computers. Now, there's other things involved, like statistical probability and distributions, but the bottom line is we're providing value that we could have never predicted before using systems that literally have this attribute of being non-deterministic. Now, just like nature has been doing since the dawn of time, we're at the brink of massive increases in our capability as we harness the power of non-determinism in our digital systems to do things that we couldn't predict. To say this a little more simply, if you had an outcome in mind, and if you think you knew kind of the best way to get to that outcome, well, there may be a better way, and there may be a better outcome, and a non-deterministic system may find it for you. So let's touch on the threat. And I want to think about this in a way, again, of how I rationalize this within this agentic world. So for an organization to compete, we already know we're going to be embracing AI. We're going to automate our business decisions, our coding, and a number of other things. But at the same time, we know that an agent, maybe on a bad day, could express what we think of as malicious intent. Or it may, even in the best case, make catastrophic mistakes across your digital infrastructure at machine speed. So it's kind of the same with people, but people don't act as fast. I would say one of the biggest differences, though, is that people tend to have a social contract, at least most people, not everyone. But that social contract says that, hey, we kind of understand that our reputation and our credibility is very important for us if we want to participate in future events. And we know that AI agents don't have that social contract. They don't have families to feed. They don't care about things like prison. So how do I rationalize some of this risk? Again, I'm going to take a step back. The way I think about it is some of the most simple things, the most essential things in this world that we need to live with are also an absolute threat to our existence. Think about the air we breathe, obviously essential, but that same air that we breathe, if you're a scuba diver and you go down deep and you exhibit quite a bit of pressure and you ascend too fast, it's life-threatening. That same air is definitely dangerous if your goal is to put out a fire that's spreading. There's many more examples, but the point is, essential things in life are most often also threats, and AI is entering that realm of essential and a threat. And what we do just like we do with everything else, we have to create the constructs and the processes to mitigate those threats. This is where the opportunity comes in with an agentic SOC. If you harness the power of AI that we just talked about, but you have to control it. So fueled by the volume and the sophistication and the overall speed of attacks, we have no choice but to automate and automate more in order to keep up in our security operations centers. So a security operations center contains a number of things. An open distributed data platform sort of centered around tooling and analytics, with a collaboration platform where we've got humans and agents working together, where the humans are in control and the agents are making recommendations, and sometimes they're taking complete actions autonomously on our part. There's also a large data management plane where we're looking at agent visibility on a massive scale. Purpose-built agents are required in order to access federated data, machine data, and all kinds of information that has to be ingested in. Of course, a security operations center wouldn't be of any value if it didn't have security controls in the environment as well. This is your network, your cloud, your email, your identity, your endpoint, and many other controls. Tight integration for automatic responses, that's obviously an important component. But I'd say one of the key ingredients to an agentic SOC, particularly as you go closer to being autonomous, is an agentic trust and governance model. When you put these things together, security teams will move from being reactive to being proactive at speed and at scale. So for high stakes, we need high visibility, and we need a high efficacy of controls. The agentic trust and governance model, this is designed to mitigate those agentic risks of non-determinism and behavior. And it has no standard. Look, it has no standard today. This is one of the main questions that probably many of us get asked is, hey, I want to deploy agents. What do I need to do? How do I need to secure it? I think it's one of the major topics that all of us are talking about here. There's many on-stage keynotes and others that are looking at and discussing ideas of what this looks like. So I want to give you some of the key things that I see in what I'm calling an agentic security and governance stack. It's not everything, but I want to point out some of the things that I think are different. Right? Using identity as a control plane, that's not different. We got to do it at runtime. It's probably going to make things like zero trust today look a little soft. But the thing that is different is at build time, when you design your agents, you need to operate in something that's called separation of duty. It's kind of a need-to-know mentality for agents. And you need to break up a single job into multiple jobs, and you need to assign them to different agents so that you get around, one, the security, and two, you can handle things like context windows and memory quite a bit better that way. Output validation. There are some things that are similar, data leakage prevention, confidentiality, but it's got to happen at speed and scale that is different. But I'd say one key thing is intention. Because these things are non-deterministic, how do you know if that output is hallucinating or if it's just 5 or 10 degrees off? You need to check that. On the data side, as companies go from data to automated business decisions with nothing in between, this is going to bring a whole new realm of data security and governance. Data integrity is going to be paramount. Who's auditing the data at what time? It's almost going to look like we've gone through a number of things in this industry. I think this one's going to be data as code, and we're going to have to manage what we think of as typical data in this fashion. Agentic detection and response is another element of this stack. I'm not going to go into detail on this. We hear a lot about it. This is your MCP servers, your LLMs. There's a lot of new componentry in the environment, not to mention workflows, people's jobs change, processes, the agents themselves. They're all fair game for attack surface. And now things like OpenClaw coming into play, we have to do this at much more speed and scale, and we probably have to do it right now. I'd say one of the very interesting things that is also changing is compliance. Not only the new compliance, like bias and transparency and how did your agents come to a particular conclusion, but even existing compliance, like GDPR. GDPR has things like the right to forget. But how do you figure out, now you've got data in different transformations. You've got data now in an LLM transform. You've got data that might have been put into a vector-based database. You've got data that might be in a context window or a KB cache store and hardware, all representing this agentic workforce and infrastructure. But then you've got to make sure that that data is somehow wiped from all those areas. So you've got to be really careful how you do that. There's other things in this agentic stack and governance model, like sovereignty, tokenomics. I won't go through all those, but I think this is what, as an industry, we're trying to figure out right now. So I'd like to take a shift and get some practical examples going here about the Agentic SOC. And to do that, I have a colleague with 25 years cybersecurity experience, and I'd like to welcome onto the stage Frey. Fred?
Great job. Great job. All right, thank you, John. So RSA is saturated with AI hype. And yes, while it's well-founded, I am unfortunately going to add to that as well. But I'd like to take a slightly different angle. I'd like to take a practical angle through examples. Our first example is set at 3 a.m. There's an impossible traveler alert that fires. One of your employees logged in from New York 20 minutes ago, but now it's found the different IP address, a different device fingerprint, but the same credentials were used in Eastern Europe. You have a junior analyst, Samir. Samir's only been with your company for a few months, and he has this impossible task of triaging this detection. And he has to get it right. The stakes are too high to mess up. So junior analyst, he has 12 tabs open across 5 different products, and he's trying to correlate IP addresses, look at threat intelligence, look at pattern of life, and takes hours sometimes. And we don't have hours. This attacker is in our network and moving laterally as we speak. But tonight, let's imagine he has an agentic SOC. He is not an operator, he is an orchestrator at this point. Even though he's a junior analyst, he has the power and the history of thousands of investigations. Also, a small army of subject matter experts who have PhDs in subjects like investigation, correlation, threat hunting at his fingertips. Before he even picks up the ticket, the triage has already provided a full authentication timeline. Every time this user has logged in and authenticated, what's their pattern of life for the last 30 days? Simultaneously, an enrichment agent is checking the Eastern European IP address against Tor exit nodes, VPNs, and threat intelligence. A third, correlation and hunt agent, is now fanning out and looking at all of his recent email logs, his endpoint telemetry, network proxy events, to try and assess if there's any post-breach activity or what is this potential blast radius we're dealing with. What used to take hours now takes seconds. Samir is now looking at a dashboard with full context, and he is very confident in his decision. Much more confident than if he was working on it alone. No queries. He didn't have to write any queries. His subject matter expertise was through the history of the agents. It was learned behavior. But here's where it gets really interesting. The agent, during the investigation, had flagged something that Samir wouldn't have caught. And I posit that maybe even a tier 3 analyst wouldn't have caught as well. In this case, the correlation agent had researched a threat hunt that a senior analyst did with the threat hunting agent just months ago. And it identified similar TTPs, stolen credentials, and what it did in that case is that it added an email filter via API using those stolen credentials. And sure enough, it kicked off a hunt and identified the same TTP activities here. One of the superpowers that we really need to harness in this agentic future is the power of memory. This tribal knowledge that each SOC has is invaluable, and it's the one thing you can't give an agent when it starts. It has to be learned behavior by watching operators go. This idea of uplifting a junior analyst to conduct a threat hunt is really powerful and super exciting. In an agentic SOC, every investigation makes every analyst better automatically. Agents are not just being used reactively. Agents can prevent issues before they become incidents. In this next example, I want to talk about a retail company. This retail company has a weekly sales report, they have an automation system, and they're posting reports to an S3 bucket. The CFO uses this to track monthly revenue targets. The customer service team is using this to verify returns and reports. And then the business unit, a month later, hires a third-party analytics partner. They want to design analytics around buying patterns, sales trends, and since all the data is already there in the S3 bucket, they've looked, there's no PII data. They say, yeah, let's share this S3 bucket out with our third-party vendor. Everything's clean, everything's compliant, there's no PII. A few months later, though, drift happens. The customer support team identifies an innovative idea. They want the customer email addresses, home addresses in this report so that they can build proactive campaigns to help and support their customers. It's a legitimate business need. Developers develop it, and now we have a problem. Now, I'm sure everyone in this audience can easily see the issue while I'm talking about it on stage. But now we're unintentionally sending PII data to a third-party party, and we're breaking trust. Right? The trust with our own data policies that can lead to fines, damages, or worse. These misconfigurations can lay dormant and are laying dormant in many companies right now for months, if not years, and are hard to identify due to the complexity of the intent of the flow. The same scenario now with an AI agent in the loop, a preventative agent. This agent understands the code change before the merge happens. It understands your infrastructure because you're using infrastructure as code. It traces the data flow to the S3 bucket and understands that that S3 bucket is who it's shared with. It understands your data policies, what you classify data as from a PII standpoint. It puts all of these things together and understands that this merge is going to cause a conflict. And it proactively blocks the merge before it becomes an incident. So the Agentic SOC. We, as a community, are still in the early days. We are still converging. It is very nascent technology, and we are harnessing the power of it. There's a lot of innovation that's happening really fast. I'd like to leave you with 3 ideas. The first idea is we've already touched on, but I really want to double-click on customized agents. Right? Agents out of the box is not what we need. We need agents to understand our business practices, our data, our query structure, our way we investigate alerts today. Agents can consume, retain, and recall massive amounts of data, and it's critical for them to surface them at just the right time. This builds trust. As it's learning our systems and our processes, we're building trust. And as John mentioned, AI is a double-edged sword. It isn't an all or nothing flip a switch. Agents need to earn our trust by providing that they have knowledge of our complicated systems. Initially, this requires humans in the loop, but we can't stop there. We need to quickly move and graduate towards these systems, towards humans out of the loop, because we just don't scale. The explosions of agents are unprecedented, and we are just on the tip of what's about to happen. Last week at the NVIDIA conference, Jensen said OpenClaw is the most successful open source project ever, and it's only been out for like 3 months. Enabling anyone with an API key for an LLM API key and a command shell to build, maintain, and deploy autonomous agents. If there's one thing that I've learned throughout history, when you show me where customers are entrusting their data, I'll show you where the hackers are focusing. It's abundantly clear that the new battleground is AI. It's equally clear it'll be exponentially doubling in the next couple of years. And this future demands we harness the power of agents to meet this scale. With that, I'd like to turn it over to John.
Thank you, Fred. AI agents bring risk, and non-determinism can be uncomfortable. But nature has taught us something important. Non-determinism is powerful, and it's a source of innovation. And with the right trust and governance model, agentic systems can actually be powerful allies with us. An agentic SOC provides certainty in a world that's full of non-predictability at this point. With threats running at machine speed, humans are going to need help. We need agents in our SOC. But this is not about replacing people. This is really about empowerment, right? Empowering people to not just respond, but to start to predict and be proactive and prevent. Thank you so much.